Namaste, Reuben. How are you? It's good to have you part of our podcast.
Thank you so much, Ole. Namaste back to you, and such a wonderful way to start off 2021 with an Indian greeting for an Indian guest.
Absolutely. We got to make it personal, right? It's all about personalization. We're gonna talk a little about your journey, but I want to dive right into it. And why did you join the Global Institute of Sport Business, and why is this program so important in India these days?
No, great question and very relevant, right? So, with my background, I've actually touched the waters in many fields. Of course, my base is sports. Of course, spent close to 5 years when I kicked off my experience in the sports industry. Tried to venture out with my own, with my own entrepreneurial venture and worked a little bit in advertising and digital marketing as well.
Right.
However, the need for being in the sports industry was always there, right?
Yep.
And I was always trying to sort of understand where it is that now, if I'm making a comeback after a few years into sport, where would be the right and the relevant place to sort of kickstart. So, I met with the team at GISB, with Neil and with the others as well. And a few things really struck, the chord with me. Number one is it's essentially something that India really needed. I myself was once in a situation where I could, I wanted to study sports management, but the infrastructure was not set up as yet for someone to study sports, and one had to sort of move abroad or spend XYZ a lot of money or whatever it is, and sort of look at opportunities in these different countries. But for me at that time, it was not a viable option. So when the GISB idea came about, what really stood out was, number one, it's industry design, and number two, it's internationally certified. So, when we talk about being industry designed, it's so relevant to have the right people sort of curating the program, right? So, because sports is so nascent in its journey here in India, you need, you have to step out of an academic sort of a background and look at what is relevant. You need to provide relevant training programs or relevant training structures for students. So an industry design program was very essential. And number two was, what does a student, when they're going abroad, what do they look for? They look for international certification, right?
Yep. All right. So obviously, you talk a lot about the benefits of sort of your way into the journey of the program and being part of it. But sort of why is this important in India? And maybe speaking of 2021 moving forward, why was the timing for this now?
So I was sharing, right, the relevance of an industry designed program, and in along with it being internationally certified, is that you can provide Indian students with relevant education with the right context of it being curated and shared by the people from the industry, right? So right from us, working with partners like yourself or the Premier League or many leading Indian sports organizations, what happens is you have faculty who are actually professionals in sport coming down and teaching. So that not only creates a relevant platform for you to network. Number two, it also provides you with a relevant place to meet employers, and you also get to know about real life case studies from them. With regards to it being internationally certified, any Indian student or any student for that matter looks for a strong certification at the end of their program.
Right.
What we've done is we've partnered with the University of Massachusetts, the leading sports management program in the world. They actually sort of teach our students, over 100 hours of programming in core sports modules, and we have professors from Massachusetts actually teaching our students.
Nice.
Sometimes, obviously during COVID it's online, but during non-COVID, we actually had them fly over to Bombay and teach students. Apart from that, GISB actually focuses a lot on partnerships, focuses a lot on nurturing future industry leaders. If I take a step back and talk about, in essence, what we want to do is we want to provide the future generation of sports industry leaders to the Indian sports Indian sports industry. And that will happen when you provide very focused, very sort of strong, deep learning within students that are coming in from multiple fields as well, right? you
Right.
have
For sure.
engineers, you have journalists, you have people with some sort of IT sports background, IT background as well. So
Right.
we see that there's a huge opportunity for providing sports management, relevant sports management training to the future professionals in sport.
Yeah.
Apart from that, GISB boasts of a very strong leadership with our parent company in India on Track, right? So if you
Right.
look at what India on Track has been doing for the past, I mean, close to a decade now. I mean, be it international partnerships, be it running grassroots development programs, now digital campaigns, as well as consulting for the biggest leagues in the world. We
Right.
are one of the biggest sports management agencies in the country, and the need for an institute as such came in from our learnings from working with so many partners within the Indian sporting ecosystem. So
Right.
it was essentially a gap that we filled in,
Yeah.
and for me to come and join this project and be a part of the team was was a privilege, and of course a great opportunity to try and give back to sport. You very commonly meet millennials in India like
Right.
ourselves, who grew up wanting to be sports athletes, who grew up to be athletes,
Right.
but didn't
Right.
necessarily get to become athletes because of X,
Yeah.
Y, Z reasons. So this is our small way of giving back to the sports industry by professionalizing it and making a more viable, business, within the Indian ecosystem. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, like, as you said too, it's like you have that, personal relationship to it too, where you say, like, oh, I wish this program was here when I was like starting my career. So, like, you
Absolutely.
have that, hunger of helping, those, as you said, the future leaders of the industry. And I mean, like, even for the industry of India, right? Like, coming
Yeah.
in there, like, helping the sport industry in India to continue growing, becoming more professionalized. As we know, there's obviously a lot of people in India, but how to like manage that, how to like professionalize, of course you have cricket and like other sports that are like, I would say very professional in that sense, but a lot of it, grassroots infrastructure, how do you help, develop that? And I think it's great that you guys are like, not only of course like helping the Indian sport industry, but also thinking, how can we help those students that are part of the program to open
Yeah.
their eyes to like look internationally through the partnerships that you have and so forth. So I think that's amazing. But looking into like sort of like the sports marketing landscape in India, because obviously you've been part of this for a decade, or at least like a lot of years now, and like what are some of the changes that you've been seeing like the last few years, especially in India? Because I think this is interesting to like kind of like get like an overview of like how the industry there has changed.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I'll give you a context first, right, about
Right.
India getting into this point. One is that India has got one of the youngest countries in the world in terms of population. If you look at 1.3 billion, you have
Right.
almost above more than around 60 to 65% of this population is below the age of 35.
Wow.
So you have a very, very fast growing young nation
Yeah.
that's really sort of fighting or growing to be a superpower over the next 10 years or so.
Right.
Secondly, if you look at data, right?
Right.
India boasts of providing the cheapest internet data on phone in the world,
Yeah.
and this is like over the past 4 to 5 years consistently India has been out there, really ensuring that people from the smaller cities, smaller towns, from lower backward communities as well have access to data. So
Right.
internet is very, very accessible within this country. And thirdly, the penetration of smartphones in this country is
Hmm.
just second to none, right? I mean,
Yeah.
every
Yeah. Yeah.
single person from all strata of society have their hands on a smartphone. So when you look at these three factors, right,
Right.
they purely talk about how reliant this country is on digital platforms. Now that is on a general
Sure.
perspective, digital is very big over here. Now when you
Sure.
take
Sure.
it to sport, then you start thinking about, okay, here's digital and here's the big boom that India is facing. How can sport be left behind? So you have fantasy gaming in India, which has become a huge it's become a monster of its own. You have,
Right.
I think there are close to 120 companies right now that are providing fantasy sport solutions to people to users from across
Right.
sports. You
Yeah.
have esports that is growing at a really really fast rate, although
Crazy.
it's very very. I mean, of course, through esports you have mobile gaming, so PUBG and all the other games
Right.
are
Yep.
growing at 4 to 5 times the rate over here. And of course, now you have a lot of leagues, you have a lot of franchisees, etc., looking to penetrate their fan engagement through digital platforms, essentially, right? It
Right.
becomes a smarter bang on the buck when you are staying on digital, because essentially then you can provide target-based marketing and ensure that your return on investment on every single penny is hitting the right point. So,
Right.
in general, the sports marketing landscape in India has become really, really digital heavy, and everyone, all of us at GISB, at Neon Track, and most sports companies here as well are beginning to understand that. So,
Yep.
as part of any sports management education institute, especially ours, we rely very heavily on having our students understand the importance of digital marketing, branding on digital, so ensuring your social media is on point, user generated content,
Right.
etc. And I mean, and stepping out of just sports marketing, if you look at the
Yep.
sports landscape in general, you have sports leagues that are mushrooming up every year. You have, over the past 10 years, you had so many leagues that have come out across multiple sports. Many are successful, many aren't, but yet they are yet coming up. You have a lot of investment, new sponsor investment put into sport. For example, if you look at the Indian Premier League this year, I
Yep.
think all the major sponsors were all digital companies that were putting in
Right.
money into sport for the first time. Until then you saw FMCG or petroleum, or those
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
companies. Now
More,
you're
more like
looking
the
at
classic. Right.
exactly the classic
Yeah.
companies. Now you're
Like
looking at
banks and
e-commerce.
yeah.
Exactly, banks. So IPL was really a stepping stone where you saw a complete digital led initiative by sponsors, and then
Right.
then you have interest from international sports organizations like the Premier League, NBA, La Liga,
Yep.
Chelsea, Man United, all of them trying to sort of come into India and try to understand the market. I mean, there is a fan base, but how do you sort of look at penetrating that? And
Right.
lastly, I mean, India is now looking at slowly stepping up on hosting events, right?
Right.
We hosted the under 17 FIFA World Cup a couple of
Yeah. I
years
heard
back.
about
It was
that.
one of the most watched under 17 tournaments, in the history of the game.
Right.
This year we were supposed to host the under 17 Women's World Cup, which unfortunately was didn't happen, and it's going to happen in 2022. But
Right.
there are talks about the AFC Asian Cup, possibly a Youth Olympics in the next 5 to 8 to 10 years. So
Right.
as sport more opportunities for sport grows, the landscape of marketing through digital consistently keeps on upgrading, keeps on changing. So I think it's a
Right.
very very exciting time to be in this country for sport.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. And I think like if there's one thing like I noticed as well from I guess like what you've been talking about right now for the last few minutes is that like how young the population is, right? And how you can target that young audience in an extremely great way, not only from like, the local and the national sports, but from the international sports. And of course, like what the pandemic has taught us too is that, things has to be digitally. And of course, like a lot of leagues and professional teams that were really good at doing that and like providing great quality content in wherever country that might be and their target market. But now, like more than ever, you talk a little bit about the sponsorship market, right? Where you see like, okay, like digital partnerships, right? And I'm kind of like curious to see how this year will unfold in terms of like new digital sponsorships and partnership, not only at a international and sort of like the big teams and the big leagues, but local teams like more minor teams and how they're utilizing to think more innovative, think more digitally, and at the end of the day cater their fans, because you kind of like, okay, when are people back in the stadium? How are we going to engage with these sort of people as much as we can, besides also just whenever they're there? And no one really knows for sure like how long it's going to take before everyone is back in the stadium. So I guess people have to just think a little bit digitally moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Makes
So
so much sense. Yeah.
so just talking like a little bit about your background at Sportz Interactive. You work with like companies such as like ICC, NDTV, etc. And what have you learned from the data and content industry that you're bringing like for the sport educational system? Because obviously you were talking a little about, okay, it's important that we teach these young sport leaders about like content, about data, about utilizing this and the social media to be professional and utilizing the market that you have. But like, what kind of stuff did you learn from your background that you're now bringing and helping those students in the program to utilize?
Yeah, yeah. It's a very critical learning that one has to take in, right? When you work with content and data in general, right?
Right.
You become more aware of numbers, right? You need to be more aware of what's happening around you, and
Yep.
for us, especially from an Indian context, uh, very important, very important point is sustainability in sport, right? Sustainability for organizations.
Right.
A
Yep.
lot of times sport can't boast of having multi-billion dollar budgets and just going crazy on having their spends spread out and
Right.
ensuring that their business does well. Here you have to talk about your return on investment on every single penny, right?
Yep. Yep.
So one thing that we keep talking about to our students, and then we look at then having the curriculum set in such a way is that you have to ensure that your spends, your marketing spends, has to provide some sort of return on investment or return of
100%.
objective in that sense. A lot of times your
Right.
investment may not be returned immediately, but at
Right.
least your objective should be gained that
Yeah.
in the next 5 years or in the next 8 years I need to grow my user base to 10x or 5x or
Right.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Second thing is that, of course, complete when you look at digital and social media, the beauty of it is you can ensure that there's data driven marketing being performed, right? So
Right.
whether it is your campaigns, whether you want to push out a campaign that's only reachable to 20-year-olds in Mumbai, you can always do that smartly, right?
Right.
So ensuring that you are able to produce your campaigns, channelize your campaigns, bracket and bucket your campaigns to your target audiences depending
Right.
on your communication. That is also very important, and these are very interlinked, right? Because
Yep.
then you are using content smartly to provide data driven marketing, and then the data that comes out of it helps you give a return on investment on your spends. So
Right.
this cycle is something that we consistently try and ensure that our students sort of understand from a very early age. It's not about saying that I have
Right.
$1 million and I can just spend about it, and that in turn tries to then channelize your fan engagement efforts to be a little more
Right.
digital. Try and track your fan engagement efforts. I know many European countries and many Western countries in that sense are able to monetize their fans a little bit smarter. In India,
Yep.
we are still not there yet. We still have a
Right.
few years to go, and we're
Yep.
still beginning to understand. I mean, and now we're beginning to track. Who is your customer buying your ticket? Who is your customer sort of purchasing your merchandise?
Right.
Ensuring that you can get an XYZ amount of monies from your customer. It's not about just sort of selling your media rights and having your customer watch it on television. It's also ensuring how can I now tap into my customer and sell him that jersey or sell him that cap or whatever it
Right.
is, right?
Yeah.
So this is just the basis of what it is, and apart from that,
Right.
once you understand the importance of data within the sports industry, then
Yeah.
the entire industry now is beginning to run on off field uh, and understanding off field data that comes in, whether it is through social media captures, fan engagement, and all of that. So I
Right.
think just a sense, it's not a direct learning in that sense. It's just an understanding of how do you smartly use transferable skills of studying and understanding numbers, and
Right.
then look at how can you inculcate those skills within your future sports industry leaders. So it's just a bit of everything that I've just spoken about, but
Yeah.
yeah, we try and inculcate it from a very young age, from a very early part of the program within
Right.
at GISB. Yeah.
I think that's important too. And I mean, like you talk a little bit about like, of course, campaigns and everything, but I mean, like, if there's one thing, and we're going to touch more into the content side too, but
Yeah,
for us, and I think a lot of, organizations too, is like, you have to be consistent, right? Like, keep the momentum going. I mean, like, I'm not going to say like, oh, we spent this and this much, because I mean, like, for us, like, we don't have a budget for like, spending, and you've been like an entrepreneur yourself, so how it is. And of course, like, how do you just like, get the most, like the highest ROI without spending, or spend the least amount that you can, like how to utilize resources in the best possible way. And I mean, like, consistency alongside with like those targeting, campaigns, utilizing the data as you were talking about to like bring results, that's like, at the end of the day, like, how can you like help those students that are in the program to, of course, provide those numbers and learn to utilize those numbers. But at the end of the day, I mean, like, even if it's like a big or a small company, or it's like, how do you bring either money back or like help developing that sort of product or service, right? So they can continue like moving forward. And the marketing side will be very important about that. But yeah, I think it was like important to talk a little bit about like consistency, like it's about really important.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's what. Once you are clear of your brand, what your brand is talking about, then consistency has to be achieved, and that has to be done on a daily basis with your, and that'll come through with your messaging, social media, your jersey, your advertisements, whatever it is. It's consistent messaging to providing a brand opinion. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about content. And in your opinion, what kind of content should companies focus on today to sort of like not get lost in the mass? Like, how do you separate yourself? And I mean, like, of course you can look at it from a general perspective, but if you also want like have more, I guess, like Indian focus or whatever, that's totally up to you.
Yeah. I mean, I'll share a bit of, I mean, general as well as from an Indian perspective, right? So
sure, that's great.
I think, according to me, in general, right, the first thing that any brand should look at in terms of getting their content right is storytelling, right?
Right.
Storytelling is so important. Your audiences become really smart. Anytime they hear about you for the first time as well. When you talk about various marketing models, the first awareness stage, whenever they hear about you, the first thing is they will look you up. And until 20 years back, that that facility wasn't available. So when they look you up, the storytelling is so important. So whenever you are when you are pushing out or creating a brand image for yourself, you really need to understand what is it that you are trying to convey. What is your story? How are you making your customer or your fans life better? What is it that they can sort of resonate with the most when they look at your brand? We have a lot of companies over here in India right now who are working with grassroots. We have companies who are working with women in football, women in sport, working with kids from backward communities to sort of create a story, create a context for why their brand is trying to help societies or help women's football development,
and
or
finding their niche, maybe, in a sense. Right?
Absolutely. So storytelling is, I think, the biggest one. If you have your storytelling right, and especially if you look at when we talk about either the millennials or the Gen Zs, storytelling is very high on the priority. They will not resonate with the brand if it's just a brand that comes and says, "Hey, buy this." They'll never do that. So they need to believe in that brand. They need to understand that, hey, this brand stands for something. So storytelling is number one. Number two is, of course, with digital, one needs to understand platforms, right? So I think understanding your platform and creating platform specific content is so important. I think we are blessed with having so many platforms, right? From Facebook to even TikTok now. And, you can't create content, or you can't create campaigns or messaging as one size fits all. You have to look at what each platform brings to the table, and how you can ensure that you can use each platform to the best of its ability. So if I'm using Instagram stories, right? That's a world of its own. It's a huge world of its own, right? If you are able to use Instagram stories as an efficient platform to
Yep.
put out your brand messaging, you will be a king in that space, right? So
Right.
I think creating platform specific content is very, very important. The
I
third
agree.
thing is, again, with regards to your digital space, we're still in that sort of digital content sort of space,
Sure.
is trying to ensure that your brand can create conversation,
Yeah.
have your users generate, I mean, create user generated content amongst
Right.
themselves. So even if it's contests, or you're having them send in their their feedback or their thoughts, on having them repost or retweet, or
Right.
enter into some sort of contest or whatever it is.
Yep.
I think UGCs, or user generated content, is one of the best and the easiest form of word of mouth content for any brand.
Right.
Word of mouth content is the most expensive form of marketing that we can get, because that essentially means that I am vouching for this brand, and to
Right.
my 1,000 other friends or 2,000
Right.
other friends, I am saying that, hey, I've used this brand and I'm vouching for it, and
Yep.
that doesn't come easy. How much of money you pay me, I will not be able to do that. And I
Right.
think if you can find a way to create, have your brand create user generated content, it
Yep.
it help you in a very, very long way. And finally, this is a very India specific point, but
Sure.
I feel India is a, obviously a huge country, and
Yep.
it's got multiple languages, cultures, food habits, and viewing habits, etc. So essentially, what we need to understand is India is a continent, and we need to understand that a lot of pockets in India would like to see hyper local content within their spaces. So if you
Right.
look at the Indian Premier League, for example,
Yep.
uh,
Yep.
over the past few years, they've been pushing out commentary in more than 8 to 10 languages across different channels of theirs. Simply because you're the user from the south of India versus the user from the north of India, they want to listen to something else. They have different
Right.
cultural nuances. They
Yep.
have different
Makes sense
styles,
though.
different memes, different jokes, etc. So
Right.
if you are a brand that reaches out to a very specific kind of target audience, you need to
Yep.
understand that creating hyper local content is very, very important for you. So
No,
just a few thoughts on content.
especially in like in such a big country like India, right? With like, so many people. Like there would be like such a variety of like their culture, their background, what they're thinking, like based on regions and so forth. So
Absolutely.
there's a lot of people to cater, and I think it is
Yeah.
very correct as you say, is like how do you like bring that local feeling or attachment to whomever you're targeting, right? And
Yeah.
make it personal. And I mean, like even like you're talking about like the different kind of platforms, right? That you have, like you even mentioned TikTok, right? And I think like you also need to figure out as a brand of like what works for you, right? Like where's your target market at? I mean, like
Yeah.
we even like did a little bit testing on TikTok. I mean, like just for fun, just to kind of like see, okay, what is this? Learn a little bit the ropes, like see what it is, right? And then we're
Yeah.
like, okay, well, it's interesting, right? But it doesn't mean like every platform that you're out there is
Yeah.
worth being on or like is relevant for your audience, right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like also like what do you want to achieve, what do you want to speak, and again talking about the storytelling. So I think like in many cases a lot of brands and teams also, of course, like if you have like $1 million budget and then like $10 million budget and you have like staff for like every position, of course like it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
But like again utilizing that to understanding where's your target audience and like what kind of story you're trying to tell to them, so it's also consistent that you share sort of like the right story with the right kind of people. And that I
Right.
think is very important to for the young people as well to think about. It's like, okay, even like building your personal brand, right, is like where do you want that to be?
Yeah.
Like should it be on Instagram, should it be on TikTok? Like what are you trying to get out of this? But I mean, like Reuben, you've been part of like this entrepreneurial success story with Between Breads, and congrats on that first and foremost. And what kind of lessons, I guess, have you brought with you that you're now like utilizing and bringing to the GISB program? Like what are
Yeah.
you sort of like bringing to them?
Yeah. No, thanks a lot. You know, when when I often ask myself this question, right? And a lot of it comes through with how we are, how Neil, myself, and the team are sort of co-creating this program with our
Right.
advisors and all of that.
Yep.
One very important learning which I have gotten, and which we try to inculcate with our students, is to really have an entrepreneurial mindset, right?
Right.
And it's very, very important, right? From
Yep.
taking ownership in projects to even ensuring that you can have a positive mind frame during the times you are low, or
Right.
facing rejection, or
Yeah.
not facing success immediately, having that everyday hustle. That's the biggest sort of learning that we try and inculcate with the students at GISB as well, right? So we just, in fact, 2 weeks ago, we just wrapped up an entire week on entrepreneurship in sport, where
Nice.
where we were working with various people from the sports industry, Indian and global, where they came
Yep.
in and shared their stories about how they help startups, how startups should sort of plan their businesses forward.
Right.
What do they do to take it to the next level? We did some exercises with a few startup
That's great.
incubator companies here as well to work with our students. And the idea
Yep.
essentially is that, hey, it's okay. It doesn't mean that you need to work for a club all the time. Once
Sure.
you are done with
Sure.
the program, you can also go out and start up something on your own. And it doesn't
Right.
necessarily have to be a sports club, right? It could be an events company, it could
Yeah.
be a podcast company, it could be a media company,
Right.
it could be a infrastructure company where you're setting up turf parks, etc. So that's something that we sort of really push forward, and we want all our students at GISB to sort of have that entrepreneurial mindset, so that even when they are working within teams, they have that self of owner, they have that
Yep. Yep.
ownership quality that they can ride on during projects, right?
Right.
Apart from that, we look at when you are an entrepreneur, and from experience, you are constantly multitasking, right? Like, for
Right.
example, when I was working at my restaurant and all of that, I was doing everything, right? In the day,
Right.
you're helping out with orders, you're helping out with how you can sort of help your chef, help your staff, all of that. You're jumping in and playing multiple roles over there.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you're sitting in and doing accounts, and all of that. So
Part of the journey.
multitasking. Sorry.
It's part of the journey.
It's part of the journey, exactly.
Yeah.
So multitasking is very, very important. So we ensure that our students are get a taste of what it is like to be in the sports industry, where they are constantly working on assignments. They have
Yeah.
live projects on the side, which we sort of work with a lot. I'll share that with you as well.
Right.
We also sort of push our students to have personal and professional projects. Even if someone
Right.
wants to do, if your goal next month is to do 50 push-ups every day, we want you to write it down somewhere and say, okay, this is your personal project.
Right.
Or you want to read a book, or if you want to watch that documentary, or whatever it is,
Yep.
have goals. Try and ensure that you're leading a whole rounded life, where you have personal goals, professional goals,
Right.
you have assignments, you have projects, and then you
Yep.
also have, at the end, you have a career pathway where all of this is going to come into fruition and help you get to that goal somewhere. So that's
Right.
something that we constantly learn, teach with the students at GISB as well. And with practical learning experiences, which I spoke about, live projects. So
Yep.
at GISB, we work with a lot of sports organizations on actual projects on solving business challenges, or problems, or case studies.
Right.
If, for example, if you want to come in and set up an office in India, what
Yep.
city should you look at? What market should you tap in? What are the
Right.
different revenue streams should you look at? So this is something
Right.
that we have our students work on. It's a very consultancy type, sort of division within
Sure.
the institute that we've created. But what happens is the students start to get a sense of practical experiences of getting their hands deep into a project, and then
Yep.
presenting or pitching back to the person who has actually offered them that project.
Right.
So we've done it in the past with top football clubs and organizations from across the world, and that's something we are seeing the students really taking on and growing from there. And finally, I mean, the basis of any business or any entrepreneur is finances, right?
Right.
If you can't get your finances right, you're
Yeah.
just someone who just speaks in the air. So
It's very
you know
true. It's
with
very true.
our program, through our capstone, we have an entire course on finance and accounting. We
Yep.
we want for each and every student that's passing out from the institute to at least I mean, they don't need to be chartered accountants or
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
accounts guy, but at least
You
the
need to
basics of
understand, right?
this is the idea. How do I budget for that idea? How do I ensure that that budget is not crossed, or how do I ensure that I'm undervaluing or overvaluing this particular service?
Right,
The fundamental of it is to ensure that it comes back to sustainability. So we
right.
want for all of the students from GISB to understand what it takes to run a sustainable business and
Yep.
have a sustainable business model. So yeah, just a few learnings that that I have from my time as an entrepreneur, which we are trying to inculcate with the students at the institute. Yeah.
I think it's really important. I think it's really great, and I mean, like, also just from a personal and professional standpoint of what we've been seeing, right? It's like not everyone can work, like for like events and sponsorship, right? Or like
Yeah.
the classic marketing. Like, I mean, like, there's so much more to do, and I think it's also great that you guys are showing the variety of
Yeah.
like learning them that, of course, like, not only that, of course they can start their own venture, because I mean, like, a startup, being an entrepreneur is not easy. It's not for everyone, as you know. But
Yeah.
again, having that mindset, and also like maybe explore. Okay, maybe I can be part of a startup, because also
Yeah.
that's a great way to get a lot of hands on, and get a lot of experience learning different kind of, and be more, I guess, like open and multitasking, right? And getting a
Yeah.
piece of a little bit of everything. And I mean, like, maybe we have to talk with you guys when we're a little bit more ready to dive into the Indian sport industry. Let's see what 2021
Yeah.
can bring. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
to wrap it up, though, I mean, like, we've been talking now for some time, and it's been great dialogue. So we're about to wrap up, and I think we talk a lot about, like, your experiences, your some tips and guides here. I think is really important. But if we're gonna narrow it down a little bit for those sports students that are out there listening to this, there's a lot of people globally
Yeah.
that are listening and tuning in here, and I think a lot of them also like, okay, well, I want to do something with content. I want to do something with like sports media. Like how do you start there, and like more importantly, I think, how do you stand out? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people competing against those kind of
Yeah.
spots.
Yeah. Very, very useful point, actually, very important point. So, I mean, in general, I mean, I feel for students looking to make a pathway in sport, right? And
Right.
I would say not just content or sports in general, it's a sports industry.
Sure.
I feel three very very important points.
Yep.
One is you have to look at an effective way to consistently network.
Right.
Networking is one of the biggest pillars of the sports industry.
Yep.
We keep talking about the kind of jobs and opportunities that one gets in sport, but all of us know that 80% of these opportunities are network based.
Right.
Very often you don't see that ad for Man United hiring or Real Madrid
Right.
hiring. It comes through networks only. So
Yep.
effective networking is so very important for anyone to start to take on. And I know a lot of young professionals and students often find it challenging to look at how they can effectively network. And it is a
Right.
journey. You won't
Yeah.
be a master at it from day one, but
Sure.
one needs to start like as of immediately, so that they can slowly start to understand the nuances and become a master at it. It's something
Right.
that is going to help any young professional in their life.
Yep.
Second thing is always have a very very strong side professional and personal projects. So you have your job, which is your whatever job that you're doing, or your course, or
Right.
whatever it is that you're doing. But
Yep.
on the side, you need to consistently have projects that are running, like I shared, right? Whether it is doing that blog or writing,
Right.
conducting that podcast or writing this article or whatever it is,
Yep.
that is keeping setting you aside apart from a lot of what others are doing in the industry. Your personal projects help you become a more rounded person. So
Yep.
whether it's doing that workout or going for a walk or waking up early or meditating or whatever it is that you
Right.
do on a daily or weekly basis,
Yep.
that runs. And then you have a bunch of professional projects that you take on the side. If
Yep.
you have this, so you have your job slash course slash whatever that you're doing on a full-time basis running on a year, but here you have a bunch of professional and personal projects that are constantly taking place, and you are adapting it over and over again.
Yep.
Very soon you'll realize that this is what is setting you aside from this, because everyone is doing this. Everyone's working, everyone's studying, but this is what sets you apart.
Yeah.
And lastly, something that's more connected to yourself is just really understanding what's your niche, right? Understanding where it is that you can add value.
Yep.
Often we ask a lot of our students to take a step back and ask why. Why is it that I'm doing this? Why am I studying sports, or why am I working in sports?
Right.
Once you ask yourself that question, you will realize that, hey, what makes me happy? Which part of the industry do I really fit in? And which part of the industry do my strengths lie in? Because once you identify that, and I'm not saying that everyone does early on. Again, that's a journey. Someone takes like 5 years. It takes time as well. But at least if you are on that path, right, you are working in a space that ensures that you are able to provide and work to your project to the best of your ability. So that sets you aside from someone else who possibly does not enjoy that work or doesn't feel is the best person to do that job. So they keep questioning themselves, saying, hey, am I the best person? Do I really enjoy it? Right. So when you are doing something that is really aligned to your strength, you don't get into that. You look at how do I get this done, or how do I do the best in this particular project. So I think these 3 points are obviously very important from my perspective. There are many that are there when people
I think there's some really good advice, Reuben. I think it's a perfect way to wrap it up. I would like to thank you so much for taking the time, sharing your story, your insights. And I mean, like, I know we started with like some namaste in the beginning, and we're gonna finish up with like some Norwegian. So I don't know if you're ready for that. But with us, like with everything we do, we always finish with vi snakkes, which means see you later in Norwegian. There you go. There you go. Perfect. All right. Thank you, Reuben.
Thank you, Ole.